Captain Frank Donovan stood by the large viewing window on the bridge of the USS Intrepid. The stars looked like tiny dots against the blackness of space. Earth's newest battleship moved slowly through the darkness beyond Pluto's orbit. This was their third week patrolling the edge of the solar system. Frank rubbed his tired eyes. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and gray starting to show in his dark hair. 20 years in Earth's Space Navy had left lines on his face. His blue uniform was always perfectly clean and pressed. "Another quiet day," said Lieutenant Susan Blackwell from her station. She watched the sensor screens with careful eyes. Susan was the best sensor operator in the fleet. She could spot things others missed. Her short brown hair framed a face that rarely showed emotion while on duty. Frank walked over to her station. "Sometimes quiet is good, Lieutenant." The Intrepid was Earth's most powerful ship. It carried weapons that could destroy small moons. Its shields could withstand hits that would vaporize older vessels. After years of silence from the stars, Earth had decided to build ships that could protect humanity if they weren't alone. Chief Engineer Alan Martinez entered the bridge. He carried a tablet showing engine readings. Alan had helped design many of the ship's systems. His family had been building ships for 3 generations, but none like this one. "Captain, engines are running at perfect efficiency," Alan reported. "The new reactor's producing more power than we expected." Frank nodded. "Good work, Martinez." At the communications station, Officer Lisa Goldstein listened to the usual background noise of space. Static and faint signals from Earth mixed together in her headset. Lisa had learned 7 Earth languages before joining the Navy. Now she hoped to be the first to understand an alien one, if they ever found anyone else out there. "Sir," she said suddenly, "I'm picking up something strange. Not a signal exactly, but there's a pattern to this static." Kevin Phillips, the tactical officer, looked up from his weapons console. His hands moved quickly over the controls. "Checking. Defense systems. All weapons ready if needed." Frank moved to the center of the bridge. "Full stop, let's see what we're dealing with." The massive ship slowed to a halt. Everyone on the bridge felt tension building in the air. Susan's eyes widened as she stared at her screen. "Captain, I'm detecting an object at the edge of our sensor range. It's not one of ours." The bridge went completely silent. First contact. The moment humanity had both hoped for and feared for centuries. "Can you get a visual?" Frank asked. His voice steady despite his racing heart. A moment later, the main screen showed a distant object. It was clearly artificial. The ship was sleek and curved, unlike the more practical designs of Earth vessels. It shimmered with a faint purple glow. "It's just sitting there," Kevin said. "About half our size, but I can't identify any weapons from this distance." Frank straightened his uniform. "Lisa, broadcast standard greeting package on all frequencies. Let them know we come in peace." Lisa's fingers danced across her console. "Sending now, sir. Audio, visual, mathematical patterns. Everything we prepared for first contact. Minutes." Passed. The alien vessel made no response and no move. "They're receiving our transmission," Lisa confirmed. "But there's nothing coming back." Alan studied the readings from his station. "That ship has some strange energy signatures, nothing like our technology." Frank turned to his crew. "Options?" "We could move closer," Susan suggested. "Show them we're not afraid." "Or we could keep our distance," Kevin countered, "until we know their intentions." Frank considered both ideas. "We'll hold position for now. Continue broadcasting greetings. Let's give them time to decide how to respond." More minutes passed. The crew watched the mysterious vessel with growing unease. "Wait," Susan said suddenly. Her voice had an edge to it. "Captain, they're doing something. I'm detecting an energy buildup." Kevin's hands moved to his weapons controls. "Shields up?" Frank raised a hand. "Not yet. Let's not make this look like aggression." A strange beam of purplish light shot out from the alien ship. It wasn't a weapon. Instead, it passed through the Intrepid's outer hull like it wasn't there. "We're being scanned," Susan reported. "Deep scan. They're looking at everything. Our engines, weapons, life support, and even the crew." Frank felt cold sweat on his back. This wasn't a friendly hello. The aliens were assessing them, studying their capabilities. "This scan is getting too intrusive," Alan warned. "They're accessing computer systems now." Frank made his decision. "Shields up. Don't target weapons, but make them ready." The Intrepid's powerful shields hummed to life, creating a blue glow around the massive ship. The alien scan continued for exactly 47 seconds, then suddenly stopped. The purple beam retracted back into the strange vessel. "They've completed their scan," Susan said. "They've seen everything. Our weapons, our defenses, everything." Frank watched as the alien ship changed position. "What are they doing now?" The answer came quickly. The alien vessel turned away from the Intrepid and started moving. Then, in a flash of light that temporarily blinded their sensors, it accelerated to a speed that seemed impossible. "They're gone," Susan said in disbelief. "They just left." The bridge was quiet again. Everyone looked to their captain. Frank's face was grim. "They came to look at us, to see what we're capable of. And now they know." "What do we do, sir?" Lisa asked. "We contact Earth immediately," Frank said, "and we prepare. Because something tells me they'll be back and they won't be alone." Kevin checked his systems. "Think they saw us as a threat?" Alan shook his head. "Or as prey." Frank looked out at the stars again. Humanity had just met its first aliens, and they had run a detailed scan of Earth's most powerful warship. The aliens now knew exactly what humans could do, and they had fled at high speed. "Send a priority message to Earth Defense Command," Frank ordered. "First contact established. Unknown vessel scanned Intrepid and retreated. Request immediate instructions." As Lisa sent the message, Frank couldn't shake a feeling of dread. The scan hadn't been random. The aliens had focused on their weapons, their defenses, their power systems. They had been assessing a potential enemy. "All stations on alert," he announced. "I don't think we scared them off. I think they went to get reinforcements." The crew of the Intrepid prepared for what might come next. Humanity had built this ship, hoping they would never need its power. Now they might need every bit of it. The monster had been awakened. The question was, whose? Far across the galaxy, Fleet Commander Zorn stood before a large holographic display. His tall, insect-like body cast a long shadow in the dim light of the command chamber. 6 thin arms moved quickly over the control panel as he studied the scan results from the human vessel. The information made his 4 eyes blink rapidly in what his species considered a sign of extreme worry. "This cannot be correct," he said to the gathered officers. His voice made a clicking sound as he spoke. "Run the analysis again." The Varnax Imperium had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 5,000 years. They had encountered hundreds of new species. Most were primitive. None had ever caused them real trouble. But this scan from the human ship showed something different. Officer Krell moved forward. "Commander, we have run the analysis 3 times. The data is accurate. The humans have weapons technology unlike anything we have seen before." Zorn's mandibles clicked faster. "Show me the power readings again." The display changed to show the energy signature from the Earth ship's reactor. It pulsed with a strange pattern that suggested the humans had discovered something the Varnax had missed in their own research. "And their weapons systems?" Zorn asked. Another image appeared. The human ship carried projectile weapons that fired solid metal at incredible speeds. The Varnax used energy weapons. Their shields were designed to stop energy, not physical objects, moving at such velocities. "Their ship design makes no sense," another officer said. "They have too many backup systems, it's inefficient." Zorn understood what the others did not. "No, it's not inefficient, it's the design of a species that expects to take damage in battle and continue fighting." He turned to face his officers. "These humans built this ship to survive combat, not avoid it. They are warriors." The room went quiet as the meaning sank in. The Varnax had grown comfortable with their superiority. They had not faced a real challenge in centuries. "What are your orders, Commander?" Krell asked. Zorn looked back at the display showing the human ship. "We must not allow this species to develop further. Prepare the battle group. 7 ships should be enough to handle 1 human vessel. He paused. We will destroy this threat before they become a problem for the Imperium. Back on Earth, Admiral Carol Bennett sat at the head of a large conference table. Military leaders from around the world looked at screens showing the data sent back by the Intrepid. The room was tense. So they scanned our most advanced ship, and then ran away, she said. Her gray hair was pulled back tightly and her uniform had more medals than anyone else in the room. That's not a friendly hello. General Paul Harris nodded. His dark skin contrasted with his white hair. They were assessing our capabilities. The question is, did they like what they saw? Admiral Bennett stood up. I don't think they did, and that's what worries me. Captain Donovan reports the aliens focused their scans on our weapon systems and power generation. They weren't interested in communication. They wanted to know how dangerous we are. She pressed a button and a new image appeared on the screens. I am authorizing the activation of the Omega Protocol. All defense forces will go to high alert. The rest of the fleet will move to defensive positions around Earth. The military leaders nodded in agreement. Humanity had prepared for this possibility for decades. Now they would see if those preparations were enough. On the Intrepid, Captain Frank Donovan called his senior officers to the tactical room. A large table displayed a 3D map of the solar system. Earth Defense Command believes the aliens will return, he said, and they probably won't be alone next time. Lieutenant Susan Blackwell studied the sensor data from their encounter. Based on their scan patterns, they seemed most interested in our weapons and shields. They spent very little time looking at our communication systems. That's not a good sign, Frank said. They weren't interested in talking to us. Intelligence Officer Patricia Wu entered the room carrying a data pad. She was the newest member of the senior staff, but her analysis skills were unmatched. I've been studying the scan they performed, she said. The way they probed our systems wasn't random. They were looking for specific weaknesses. This wasn't first contact protocol. This was military intelligence gathering. Kevin Phillips, the tactical officer, frowned. So they see us as enemies already? We haven't done anything to threaten them. Patricia shook her head. Maybe our existence is threat enough, or maybe they just eliminate any potential competition before it can become dangerous. Chief Engineer Alan Martinez spoke up. Captain, I can modify our shields to resist another scan like that. If they try to look inside our systems again, they'll get nothing but static. Frank nodded. Do it. And I want weapons and engines at full readiness at all times. If they come back, I don't want any surprises. Lisa Goldstein, the communications officer, had been quiet until now. Should we try to prepare some kind of peace message? Maybe they were just curious? Patricia shook her head. They weren't saying hello. They were assessing how dangerous we are. Frank looked at each of his officers. Prepare for both possibilities. We'll hope for peace, but be ready for war. The days that followed were tense. The crew of the Intrepid continued their patrol at the edge of the solar system. Engineers worked around the clock to strengthen the ship's systems. Weapons were checked and rechecked. Alan Martinez worked with his engineering team deep in the ship. They modified the shield generators to create a new layer of protection. Next time they try to peek inside, he told his team, they'll get a nasty surprise. In her quarters, Susan Blackwell couldn't sleep. She kept reviewing the sensor data from the alien encounter. Something about their ship's energy signature bothered her. It had fluctuated in a pattern that seemed almost familiar, but she couldn't place it. On the 3rd day after the encounter, she suddenly sat up in bed. That's it. She rushed to the bridge, still in her off-duty clothes. Captain, she called, to Frank, who was reviewing reports. I need to show you something. She pulled up the energy readings from the alien ship and compared them to old Earth records. See this pattern? It's similar to what we used to see from nuclear weapons before. They were banned on Earth, but much more advanced. She looked at Frank with worry in her eyes. Their entire ship is powered by what's essentially a controlled nuclear explosion. If that ship was destroyed near others, Frank understood immediately. It would take out everything nearby. They're using their power source as a weapon too. He turned to the communication station. Send a priority message to Earth. The aliens aren't just scanning us, they're weaponized at a level we haven't even considered. As the message was sent, the Intrepid's long-range sensors began to light up with warnings. "Captain," Susan called. "Out," her voice tight. Multiple warp signatures detected approaching from beyond Pluto's orbit. 7 distinct vessels in attack formation. Frank stood in the center of the bridge. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations. The visitors are back and they've brought friends." The crew of the Intrepid rushed to prepare for what was coming. Humanity's first interstellar war was about to begin. The USS Intrepid's alarm systems blared throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed in every corridor. Crew members ran to their stations as the 7 alien vessels approached. Captain Frank Donovan stood firmly on the bridge. His face showed no fear, though he knew his ship was outnumbered. "Distance to alien fleet?" Susan Blackwell checked her sensors. 6 million kilometers and closing fast, sir. Their speed is incredible. They'll be in weapons range in 17 minutes. Frank made his decision quickly. "Send emergency broadcast to Earth Defense Command. Let them know we're engaging the enemy." He turned to tactical. "Kevin, prepare. All weapon systems. We need to buy Earth time to prepare." Kevin Phillips nodded as his hands moved across his station. All railguns charged. Missile tubes loaded. Defense point systems online. The Intrepid moved to intercept the incoming alien fleet. The massive Earth battleship looked small compared to the group of sleek alien vessels approaching in a V-shaped formation. "Lisa, any response to our communication attempts?" Frank asked. Communications Officer Lisa Goldstein shook her head. "Nothing on standard channels, but wait." She adjusted her equipment. "I'm receiving something now." A strange series of clicks and whistles came through the ship's speakers. The ship's computer worked to translate the alien language. "It's a message," Lisa said. "Basic meaning, surrender or be destroyed." Frank's jaw tightened. "Send back our response, we stand our ground." The alien fleet continued their approach. Through the main viewing window, the crew could now see the purple glow of the Varnac ships. "They're entering weapons range in 30 seconds, Susan reported. Frank looked at his crew. These men and women might be the first casualties in humanity's first interstellar war. "Whatever happens next," he said, "know that Earth is proud of you." The first attack came without further warning. Brilliant beams of purple energy shot from the lead Varnac ship. They struck the Intrepid's shields, which flared bright blue on impact. "Shield status?" Frank called out. Alan Martinez checked his readings. "Shields holding at 92%, but they're hitting us with more power than we've ever tested against." Frank nodded. "Kevin, return fire, target their lead vessel." The Intrepid's main railguns fired. Massive metal projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds left the ship. They crossed the space between the vessels in seconds. When they hit the lead Varnac ship, its purple shields flashed brightly. But unlike the Intrepid's shields, the alien protection flickered and partially failed. 2 of the projectiles punched through, tearing into the alien vessel's hull. On the Varnac's command ship, Fleet Commander Zorn watched in shock as the human weapons penetrated their defenses. Purple blood from an injured crew member splattered across the deck. "Impossible," Officer Krell shouted. "Their primitive projectiles should not penetrate our shields." Zorn understood immediately. "Their weapons are not energy-based. Our shields are designed to stop energy, not physical objects at such velocities." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their weapon systems, all ships fire at once." Back on the Intrepid, Susan called out, "They're changing formation. All vessels targeting us simultaneously." Frank gripped the arms of his command chair. "Brace for impact." Multiple beams struck the Intrepid from different angles. The shields held for a moment, then began to fail in sections. "Port shield generator, failing," Alan reported. His voice remained calm despite the danger. "Decks 7 and 8 exposed to direct fire." An explosion rocked the ship. Smoke filled part of the bridge as a console exploded. A crew member screamed in pain. "Medical team to the bridge," Frank ordered. He turned to Kevin. "Target their weapons arrays. Fire everything we've got." The Intrepid's weapons fired again. Railguns launched more projectiles while missile tubes opened, sending dozens of warheads toward the alien vessels. The Varnax ships tried to evade, but two took direct hits. One smaller vessel exploded completely, while another spun out of formation with severe damage. Susan monitored the enemy's movements. "They're surrounding us," she warned. Classic Wolfpack tactics. Frank studied the tactical display. The aliens were using their numbers advantage well. Soon they would be able to hit the Intrepid from all sides at once. "Alan," Frank called to his chief engineer. "What about the Thunderbolt system?" Alan looked up from his damaged station. "It's never been tested in combat, sir. The power requirements could overload our systems." "Do we have a choice?" Frank asked. Alan shook his head. "Probably not. I'll start the power-up sequence." The Thunderbolt was the Intrepid's most experimental weapon. It could channel the ship's massive reactor output into a focused beam of energy. The technology was powerful but unstable. The ship took another series of hits. This time, the impact threw crew members from their stations. Emergency lights kicked on as main power fluctuated. "Damage report," Frank called out. Patricia Wu checked. The ship's status. "Hull breaches on decks 5 through 9. 2 decks exposed to vacuum. Casualties reported in engineering and weapons control." Frank made his decision. "Alan, how long until Thunderbolt is ready?" 4 minutes to full power," Alan replied. "If the reactor holds." "Lisa, broadcast to all Varnax ships," Frank ordered. "Tell them we're standing down. Make them think we're surrendering." Lisa looked surprised but followed orders. She sent the message in the format they had decoded from the alien communications. The attack paused briefly. The Varnax ships maintained their positions but stopped firing. On his command ship, Zorn received the message. "They surrender already? Their ship is damaged but still functional." He was suspicious. "Scan them again. I want to know what they're doing." A purple scanning beam reached out toward the Intrepid. "They're scanning us," Susan reported. Frank nodded. "Good. Let them look at our power systems." He turned to Alan. "How much longer?" 2 minutes, Alan replied, his hands moving quickly over his controls. "But Captain, once we fire this, every ship in the area will know exactly what we're capable of. There's no going back." Frank looked at the tactical display showing the 7 alien vessels surrounding his ship. "They already decided what happens next when they fired on us. We're just finishing the conversation." The scan beam from the Varnax ship suddenly pulled back. "Sir, they've detected the power buildup," Susan reported. "They're moving to attack positions again." Frank straightened in his chair. "All power to forward shields. Kevin, prepare to fire Thunderbolt on my mark." The Varnax ships opened fire again. This time all 7 vessels concentrated their beams on the Intrepid's forward section. The ship shook violently. Warning alarms blared as systems failed throughout the vessel. "Shields at 15%, Alan shouted over the noise. "Thunderbolt. Ready to fire." Frank looked at the enemy ships on the main screen. "Target their command vessel. Fire." The front section of the Intrepid began to glow with energy. A strange humming sound built throughout the ship as power from the reactor channeled into the experimental weapon. Then a blinding beam of blue-white energy erupted from the Earthship. It crossed the space between the vessels instantly. When it struck the Varnax command ship, the alien vessel's shields flared and then collapsed completely. The beam cut through the alien ship from front to back, slicing it nearly in half. Fleet Commander Zorn watched in horror as his bridge filled with blinding light. His last thought was a realization. They had not awakened prey. They had awakened a monster. Bright light filled the bridge of the Intrepid as the Thunderbolt weapon fired. When the light faded, the crew saw the Varnax command ship split nearly in half, drifting dead in space. The other alien vessels moved back in apparent shock. "Direct hit," Kevin Phillips reported, his voice filled with awe. "Their command ship is completely disabled." Captain Frank Donovan had no time to celebrate. "Status of the Thunderbolt system?" Chief Engineer Alan Martinez checked his readings, with a frown. "The power drain was massive. Main reactor is down to 40% capacity. We can't fire it again without a complete recharge." Frank nodded. "What about the other systems?" Not good, Alan replied. Life support is running on backups in half the ship. Shields are below 10%. Main engines are operational but at reduced power. The damaged Intrepid floated in space, surrounded by 6 remaining Varnax ships. The aliens seemed to be regrouping after the loss of their commander. They're confused, Patricia Wu observed, watching the enemy movements. They didn't expect us to have that kind of firepower. Frank knew they had only moments before the aliens recovered from their surprise. Susan, any sign of more enemy ships? Lieutenant Susan Blackwell checked her sensors. Nothing on long-range scans yet, but our sensors are damaged. I can't be certain. Frank made a quick decision. We need something they don't expect, something that will end this before we're overwhelmed. He turned to Alan. What about the Lazarus Protocol? The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what the Lazarus Protocol was. It was the Intrepid's most classified weapon system, never before activated outside of theoretical tests. Alan's face went pale. Captain, that system is highly experimental. The risk to our own ship is significant. And if we don't use it? Frank asked. Alan looked at the tactical display showing the 6 alien vessels moving to surround them again. Then we don't survive the next attack. Frank nodded. Begin the Lazarus activation sequence. Authorization code Donovan Alpha 79. Alan entered the code into his console. Lazarus protocol initiated. System will be ready in 3 minutes. Frank turned to Lisa. Broadcast on all channels. Tell the crew to prepare for Lazarus activation. The announcement echoed throughout the damaged ship. Crew members looked at each other with a mixture of fear and determination. They had all been briefed on the Lazarus protocol during their training, but no one ever expected to use it. The Varnax ships began to move again, taking up attack positions. Without their commander, they were less coordinated but still dangerous. They're targeting our engines, Susan warned. Energy buildup detected in 3 enemy vessels. Frank looked at Alan. How much longer? 2 minutes, Alan replied, working frantically at his station. The ship wouldn't survive 2 more minutes of concentrated fire. Frank needed another option. Kevin, target the closest Varnax vessel with remaining conventional weapons. Lisa, broadcast on all frequencies that we're about to self-destruct. Make it convincing. The crew moved quickly to follow orders. The Intrepid's remaining railguns fired at the nearest alien ship, causing minimal damage but drawing their attention. Lisa sent the fake self-destruct message, making it seem as if the human ship was about to explode as a last act of defiance. On the remaining Varnax ships, the alien crews watched with caution. Their sensors detected power fluctuations in the human vessel that seemed to support the self-destruct claim. They moved back slightly, not wanting to be caught in the blast. It's working, Patricia said. They're backing off. Alan continued. The Lazarus activation sequence. 1 minute remaining. Frank addressed his crew. Once Lazarus activates, the ship will appear to shut down completely. All systems will go dark for exactly 15 seconds. When they come back online, we'll be different. Susan looked concerned. Sir, what exactly will happen to us? Frank could only shake his head. No one knows for sure. The theory is solid, but this has never been done before. The final seconds counted down. Alan finished the sequence and looked at his captain. Lazarus protocol ready, sir. Frank took a deep breath. Activate. Alan pressed the final command. Instantly, every light, every system, every bit of power on the Intrepid shut down. The massive battleship went completely dark, drifting silently in space. On the Varnax ships, the aliens watched in confusion. Their sensors showed all power signatures from the human vessel had disappeared. They've shut down completely, an officer reported on the lead ship. No energy readings, no life signs. Another officer clicked his mandibles nervously. Was that the self-destruct? No explosion, the first replied. Perhaps their systems failed before they could complete it. The new commander made a decision. Move closer. Confirm the human vessel is no longer a threat. One Varnax ship approached the seemingly dead Intrepid. Their scanners probed the dark hull, finding no signs of power or life. Inside the Intrepid, the crew waited in complete darkness. Emergency lights didn't even function. The only sound was their breathing. Frank counted down in his head. 3, 2, 1. Deep inside the ship, something changed. The main reactor entered a state that defied conventional physics. Instead of just using its fuel, it began to draw energy from the fabric of space-time itself. The revolutionary technology had never been deployed before. From the outside, the Varnax ship saw nothing at first. Then, slowly, a strange glow began to form around the human vessel. It wasn't the normal blue of their shields or the white of their weapons. This was something else. A rippling distortion that seemed to bend the light of distant stars. On the bridge, power returned. But everything felt different. The air seemed to hum with energy. Displays showed readings that made no scientific sense. Lazarus protocol fully activated, Alan reported, his voice filled with wonder. The reactor it's producing more power than should be physically possible. The Intrepid began to pulse with strange energy. The hull itself seemed to shimmer as if partially existing in another dimension. Susan stared at her sensor readings in disbelief. "Captain, I'm detecting a localized distortion in space-time forming around our ship." Frank felt a strange tingling throughout his body. The Lazarus protocol was affecting everything, even the crew themselves. "All weapons systems are different," Kevin reported. "The computer doesn't even recognize them anymore." The nearest Varnax ship, only 10 kilometers away, suddenly found itself caught in the edge of the effect. Its hull began to stress and warp under forces its designers had never anticipated. 2 more alien vessels attempted to retreat, but found themselves trapped in the gravitational wake being generated by the Intrepid. Frank looked at the main screen, which now showed the Varnax ship struggling against invisible forces. "The monster awakens," he said quietly. The Intrepid was no longer just a battleship. It had become something else, something that defied the known laws of physics. The Varnax had scanned a warship. What they faced now was beyond their comprehension. Frank turned to Kevin. "Target all remaining enemy vessels. Let's show them what we've become." The USS Intrepid glowed with impossible energy as it hovered in space. The ship seemed to exist partly in this dimension and partly in another. The remaining Varnax vessels tried to escape, but 3 were caught in the strange field surrounding the human battleship. Captain Frank Donovan watched on the main screen as one alien ship twisted and broke apart. Its hull plates couldn't withstand the forces pulling at them from multiple directions at once. The other 2 trapped vessels fired, desperately, but their weapons passed through the distortion field and disappeared into nothingness. "Their weapons aren't even reaching us," Kevin Phillips reported from Tactical. "The field is absorbing them somehow." Frank turned to his chief engineer. "Alan, what's happening to our ship exactly?" Alan Martinez shook his head in wonder. "The Lazarus protocol has changed the Intrepid at a fundamental level. We're generating a localized disruption in space-time. The reactor is drawing energy from everywhere. It's like we're connected to the fabric of the universe itself." 3 Varnax ships managed to pull away from the effect. They regrouped at a safe distance, clearly preparing to flee. "They're getting ready to run," Susan Blackwell said, watching her sensor readings. "Their engines are powering up for faster-than-light travel." Frank made his decision. "Target the furthest ship. Stop them from escaping." Kevin looked up in surprise. "Sir, you want to let some of them go?" "We need survivors to tell the story," Frank explained. "To warn others what happens when you attack Earth." Kevin nodded and adjusted his targeting. The weapons controls felt different under his hands. The ship's conventional weapons had been transformed by the Lazarus field into something new. When he pressed the fire button, the Intrepid didn't launch missiles or fire railguns. Instead, a focused beam of the distortion field itself shot out toward the targeted Varnax ship. When it hit, the alien vessel simply folded in on itself, collapsing into a point of light that quickly faded away. The bridge crew watched in shocked silence. They had just witnessed a level of destructive power beyond anything humanity had ever wielded. The remaining two Varnak ships accelerated to escape velocity and disappeared into faster-than-light travel, fleeing back to their empire with news of the human weapon. "They're gone," Susan confirmed. "No other vessels in the area." Frank looked around at his crew. The battle was over, but the Intrepid remained transformed. The ship hummed with power that shouldn't exist. "Alan, can we shut down the Lazarus protocol now?" Alan checked his readings with concern. The system was designed to be temporary, but the readings don't match anything in the theoretical models. "I'm not sure what will happen if we try to shut it down." Frank considered their options. The Intrepid couldn't return to Earth while generating this field. It might cause catastrophic damage to anything nearby. But they couldn't stay here forever. "Begin shutdown sequence," he ordered. Slowly, Alan nodded and carefully started the process. The strange glow around the ship began to fade gradually. The humming sound decreased in pitch and volume. "Power levels dropping," Alan reported. "Reactor returning to normal parameters." The crew held their breath. For a moment it seemed the ship might tear itself apart as it transitioned back to normal space. The hull groaned under the strain. Consoles flickered on and off. Then, everything stabilized. The Intrepid returned fully to normal spacetime. The extraordinary energy was gone, leaving the battered but intact battleship drifting among the stars. "Shutdown complete," Alan said with relief. "We're back to normal operation, or what passes for normal after all this damage." Frank looked around at his tired crew. "Damage report?" Patricia Wu checked the ship's systems. "Life support stable on all remaining decks. Engines at 60% capacity. We've lost 2 railgun batteries and most of our missile tubes. The Thunderbolt system is offline completely." "Casualties?" Frank asked quietly. Patricia's face grew solemn. 27 confirmed dead, 42 injured." Frank closed his eyes briefly. Each loss felt personal. "Set course for Earth, best possible speed. We need to report what happened here." 2 weeks later, the damaged Intrepid limped into Earth orbit. Smaller vessels approached to assist with repairs and to evacuate the wounded. The battle-scarred ship became an instant symbol of humanity's first interstellar war. In the large meeting chamber of the United Earth Defense Command, Admiral Carol Bennett addressed the gathered military and political leaders. Captain Frank Donovan stood beside her, still wearing his uniform despite the bandage visible on his neck. "The Varnax Imperium now knows we exist," Admiral Bennett said, "and they know we're dangerous. The survivors of their attack fleet will have reported what they saw, what our ship did." A general raised his hand. "Do we expect retaliation?" "We must prepare for that possibility," Admiral Bennett replied, "which is why I've authorized full production of more Lazarus-capable vessels. The technology worked better than our scientists ever predicted." Frank stepped forward. "The Varnax will think twice before attacking us again, but they won't stay away forever. Their empire spans hundreds of worlds according to the data we gathered. They've conquered other species before. They won't tolerate a potential rival." On the main screen, images of new ship designs appeared. Larger, more powerful vessels, all incorporating the lessons learned from the Intrepid's battle. "Construction begins immediately," Admiral Bennett announced. "We'll build a fleet that can defend Earth against anything the galaxy throws at us." 3 months later, Frank Donovan stood on the observation deck of Earth Orbital Station 1. Below him, the blue-green planet turned peacefully, but the space around it had changed. Defense platforms orbited at strategic points. New ships with advanced weapons conducted training maneuvers. Susan Blackwell joined him at the window. Her uniform now carried the rank insignia of Commander. "The bound Jupiter Shipyards just launched the second Lazarus-class battleship," she told him. "They're calling it the Defiance." Frank nodded. "Appropriate name." "Do you think they'll come back?" Susan asked. "The Varnax?" "Yes," Frank said simply. "But next time, we'll be ready." As they spoke, the long-range detection grid at the edge of the solar system picked up an unusual signal. Not Varnax ships this time. Something different. A message, broadcast on multiple frequencies in several language formats. from a group of species who had long suffered under Varnak's expansion. They had heard rumors about the human ship that had defeated a Varnax battle group. They wanted to talk. Earth wasn't alone in the galaxy, and it wasn't alone in its fight against the Varnax Imperium. The monsters that the Varnax had awakened would become not just defenders of Earth, but champions for all who had suffered under their rule. When Captain Frank Donovan received his new orders days later, they weren't to patrol the borders of human space. They were to make contact with potential allies. Humanity was stepping onto the galactic stage, not just as warriors but as liberators. The Varnax had scanned Earth's battleship and awakened a monster. But they didn't realize that monsters could be heroes too.